Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a special call meeting work session of the Board of Commissioners for July 9th, 2018. And with that, I think we have one agenda item, right, Bill?
Yes, sir. We are here today to present the proposed 2019 budget. Right here. Perfect. Okay. So in doing so, we wanted to just go over the schedule that we have in front of us. On July 9th, we had the budget advertised in the MDJ. Our first public hearing will be tomorrow at our regularly scheduled BOC meeting at 9 a.m. Our second public hearing will be at the special called BOC meeting on July 17th at 6:30 p.m. And our third and final public hearing and adoption will be on July 25th at the regularly scheduled 7 p.m. BOC meeting. And this was originally scheduled for the 24th, and the meeting has been moved to the 25th. Okay. As a part of all of our budget presentations, one of the things that we do is we talk about all of the full-time positions and the position amendments, so the board is aware of any positions that are included in this budget. So going forward, this 19 budget includes 114 new positions. 77 of those are public safety, 37 are non-public safety positions. So within the general fund, there's 59 positions, 30 are public safety, 20 DOT, 5 elections, and 4 fleet. And those positions are listed before you. And this is a continuation of the previous slide, again listing the general fund positions. And then we also have some labor distribution, which are 6 positions, which are public safety related, or 6 public safety positions here, and these are split between various funds. And the breakout is 45% general fund, 45% fire, and 10% 911. Okay, and then we get into some of our other funds. We talked about the fire district fund. This is a self-supporting fund, has its own millage rate.
Can you back up 1 second?
Yes, sir.
DOT would be any part of DOT. I mean, which ones are DOT?
Sorry. Yeah, right here. This is a continuation. So we have DOT is going to start here under, let's see, it'll be on this slide. This is our DOT positions here. So the crew leader, equipment operator, crew worker, fleet technician. So it's just the top 3 on this slide: the crew worker, the equipment operator, and the crew worker. So you have 4, 8, and 8. So that's our 20 DOT positions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Talked about the labor distribution. The fire fund, again, is self-supporting fund. There's 36 new positions being created in the fire fund, all of which are classified under public safety. Those positions are listed here. Obviously, the majority of those, you go down, you'll see 15 firefighter 2s that make up the vast majority of the positions. And then you have 9 fire drivers, engineer grade 18, and 3 lieutenants. And then this gets into a few of our other funds. We have the transit fund, which is requesting 6 new positions. And actually, 4 of these positions are in the request is to be shifted off of grant-supported positions into basically general fund supported or transit supported positions. The other two are just additional new ads. But these would all be considered new full-time positions because they are no longer supported by a grant or the transit fund itself.
Okay, what's driving that?
There's two of them are coming off of this due to the federal transit management study that was done as part of their recommendations, and then the remaining four that are being shifted from the grant to being general fund supported here are just to give some additional flexibility within the grant and operations.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and then we have our streetlight district. This is our.
Bill, on.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Commissioner. I'm sorry, I didn't see.
That's okay. So these are already funded, approved.
These are not
Just
approved
not funded.
positions. That's correct. These would be creating these new positions, and you'd have to create new positions because 4 of them are being funded by grants. So you're going to have to create new positions that would be non-grant funded. So that's how we have 4 of these classified. The other 2 would be brand new positions altogether.
Well, until our study comes back
Sure.
and until we know what we're doing with the new transit bill, why are we adding or changing anything in transit?
That's a fair question. This came out of part of the liaison commissioner meeting. I believe Commissioner Ott is the liaison commissioner over DOT, and I believe this was part of the asks overall as we went through those meetings. But that's a good question. So we can look into that, and we can meet with you individually, or if anybody else has additional questions on that, we can talk about it.
I just think we need to hold off on
Sure.
anything new until we know what we're
Sure.
going to put in place.
And to give you an idea, the total transit position asks is roughly $523,000. So if you wanted to do something that was different than that, this would reduce or impact the general fund subsidy because we're showing right now the general fund subsidy is looking to go up $3.9 million from FY18. If any of these were removed or modified, that would have a direct impact on the subsidy, meaning it could potentially bring it down. But again, it's a small number at the end of the day.
Okay, what is the total 3.9 million for transit subsidy?
The total subsidy,
Or you have another slide for that, or are we going through that now?
I do not have another slide for that, but I'll get you the
No,
full.
no, I'd go ahead and answer a question.
Well,
then.
Okay.
but it was on that sheet that I asked you to send to the
Right.
commissioners last week, all right?
Yes, it was.
So,
Yes.
It's right here.
right, so the 3.9 million, that's because of the loss of FTA grant funds, right?
That's correct.
That
That's
has nothing to do with these positions.
just a small portion, because this is, again, 500,000 total. But yeah, the vast majority of the 3.9 is the loss of operating revenues for the transit fund. Like most transit programs, we get federal and state dollars to begin an operation. Sunday service is a perfect example of that. We're gonna receive a grant award for the first 3 years of service. And then after that, a lot of times we see grant reductions or grants go away altogether. And that is what we're seeing under the current operations now, is we're seeing less grant operating dollars available to us, which increased that subsidy by the $3.9 million.
So the $3.9 million, these positions are in addition to the $3.9 million?
These are included, so you
Included.
could say 3.4 of it is loss of grant
523.
revenue, and the additional 5 would be
All right,
these
gotcha.
positions.
All right, thanks.
All right, well, I agree with Commissioner Burrow that we need to, I would recommend holding off on these until we find out what's going on with transit.
Sure.
And possibly shifting those to personnel for parks, since we've required so much parkland and we desperately need people there. But if we're gonna do it, leave it in the budget for that and wait until we have the other.
No, that's really good.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Cupid, yes.
I just think it's helpful to know, again, what's driving the request for the positions.
Sure.
And what is the justification for the request?
Sure.
Because if there's something that is looming that we should be mindful of, then even the possibility of us incorporating the recent transit bill that passed may not be sensitive enough to respond to this immediate request. So I'm
Well,
be
what I
appreciative
can,
of some backup on.
absolutely, what I can do for the board is I'll send out the justification for these 6 positions, and then we'll just look for your feedback of how do you want us to proceed.
Okay.
Well, I think there's a consensus on the board that we want to wait until this transit survey and study are done.
Sure.
To get a real picture of where it is we're going to go in the future.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, because we don't know what we're gonna need to do with this, with the overall system. It's gonna have an impact. The studies, at least the study alone, is gonna have an impact on the system. And we need to be able to define exactly what it is we want to do with that study and the results of it to see how it's going to shape the new system.
Chairman, I understand that perspective, but we've known about this bill, yet this appears on the list. So those that put it on the list certainly had to be aware of that, and I'm just trying to figure out why, in light of all of what we should have known,
Right.
that this still is ending up on the list. And if there's a consensus, or three of us that are questioning this, how did it get on the list in the first place?
Well, because the budget process, again, is a dynamic process. There's a lot of things that happen as we get, part of it is, Commissioner, is that we don't all meet together on a regular basis, all right? I have to go and individually sit down with you as I hear issues pop up. Whereas I don't have the luxury to say, okay, look, we got some things coming on here, let's all get five of us together and talk about it. This is a consequence of not being able to have that luxury because the law says I can't do it. So to me, the purpose of today is to nail down, all right, what's on that list. I've said that for weeks now, is that this list is negotiable. And this is a good example of, we have three of you here that have, look, we have some issues about this, and I've said all along here, I'm willing to work with you on this. On this one here, it got on the list because it was, as it came out during the budget talks with each one of you, I heard this as a priority from the commissioner, all right? And I added that based on the way, what I heard over the 4 months, I added it to the list. But again, this list is gonna be a result of what I have discussed here with you, and I'm flexible to go ahead and say, okay, let's delay this until later, until the study's done.
And that's what I mean, unless, so if a commissioner drove it getting on the list, I think that we at least owe it to the commissioner to explain a little bit more as to why it's here before we just make a decision like that.
Well, and I'll do that, all right? And again, you know, he's not here today to do that, but I think the bottom line is that we all have a requirement here to move this process forward, because we are down to about 2 weeks before we have to vote on it.
And
And I'm willing to say that we're not saying no to this. What we're saying is not right now. We're not saying no, flat out no. We're saying is the circumstances for us to support this funding is not ready yet because of the transit study not being done.
Chairman.
Well, these were commissioner driven, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I guess I'm trying to flesh out a process more than, I'm not necessarily arguing with any justification as to how it got here.
Sure, right.
But is this, right now, we are weighing what's being put before us. Is this the appropriate time now to be pulling things when right now we're hearing a presentation? Because a lot of thought went into what got before us
No,
today.
it isn't. That's the beauty of this process.
Okay.
Is that we're still early in it. We really have it until the night of July 25th
Yeah,
to make the final yes or no.
okay,
What we're hearing though is that this is the first time
That-
when we've all been able to sit down together, well, almost all of us,
Yeah.
all right, to talk about that list that was out there and then trying to start to round it out to see what it's gonna look like on July 25th.
Okay.
Better we have that discussion today
Yes.
than on July 25th.
All right, I agree with
When we're
you.
trying to, make a last minute change.
Another request is if this is a transit-oriented request, that we speak to the transit manager too to find out how this impacts operations.
right,
Because
right.
the policy decision of us incorporating that bill, again, the horizon of anything from that actually impacting operations could be what, a year, 2 years out? This request is for this next fiscal year,
Right.
so I'm just curious to know how it's before us first, before we make any immediate decisions. At least try to find out why it's here, and then we find out why it's here. Should it be taken off? Maybe not everything should be taken off. Maybe after this discussion, maybe 2 should be, maybe 3, maybe all of them. But I'm just trying to figure out how we are putting things here, how we are pulling things, based off of just general discussion when I thought we will have a formal vote on.
No, not today, no, because again, we still haven't had a chance for public input either.
Yeah,
And I've been saying
okay.
along, what I don't want to do is rush you into judgment
Okay.
without hearing from an important part of this process, which is the people.
Okay,
So I think that when we do the next 3 public hearings, plus I have one more town hall tonight, we're gonna hear enough from all across the spectrum
Yeah.
to make a more informed. And remember, during the public hearings, we also have the opportunity to discuss this.
Okay,
So we'll be back together, and we'll all have 5 of us at that time.
okay,
So I think that your point's well made, but if, I want to assure you, we're not looking to make a decision today on that.
okay.
But what I'm hearing for the first time is that we have concerns for this list here, and when I get a hold of Commissioner I'll let him know that. I don't see Andrea here. Is she here today? Anybody from DOT? Is Erica here?
Michael Francis is here.
Okay, I mean, could you respond to the commissioner's
Well,
concern?
one thing, Mr. Chairman, I'm just simply giving you my opinion. We're not asking you to pull or take
Right,
anything
right.
out.
Yeah,
And we've
that's
had
what I-
numerous town halls, and Commissioner Ott's not here, and he inadvertently must have gone to the wrong town hall of the night, because he didn't go to ours, he went to someone else's. But, I'm just simply asking that we pull them off and, discuss it before we
Right.
make that decision.
Right, now, I just want to share, we're not here to pull anything off today, all right? We're here to talk about it, all right? And then I will shape to this, what I'll do is I'll come back to you, all right, during the public hearing and say, okay, this is what I've heard from you. I've gone to the commissioner that was a respective liaison for that department, and here's why it was on the list. And that will help you form a decision whether you want to leave it on there or take it off down the road. Okay. Okay, so,
Just to get us started in the process, and whatever we present today, it will not be the same list by the time we get to the 24th or 25th. This is always being modified as we go through the process through commissioner input and obviously the public's input as well. So, okay, so we're going to continue on. We have 2 positions being added to the Streetlight District Fund. Again, this is a self-supporting fund. And then we have 6 positions being added to the 911 fund, again, a self-supporting fund. Okay. And then we do have these that are called position reallocations. This is where we move positions between funds. You can see here in the general fund, we're moving some to fire, moving from fire to IS. And then we have, we talked about this, we're moving the safety village from general to fire. And then we have some additional parks positions that are being currently working in solid waste that are going to be moved to the solid waste fund. And then we also have the differential pay, which is an ongoing for police differential pay of 235 positions, and then the sheriff incentive and retention pay that is also part of that. And then we have 2 CTO positions for 911. Sorry, yes.
Commissioner Burrow first, and then I'll let Commissioner Cupid jump in.
Okay. The first 2 personnel reallocations,
Yes, ma'am.
why are we taking out of fire fund to IS when IS is in the general fund
These
and
are
fire fund is self-sustaining?
correct. These are IS-supported positions. So as a part of that, we are bringing them back in-house to IS they will, for example, we have a lot of positions that are like that throughout the county where you have an IS person housed at your facility. We use those. Finance actually is going to be having one. And then we have several at other locations where it's IS, so we can get a higher level type position for those IT needs and solution needs versus somebody like if we were trying to hire a systems person in finance, we would not necessarily have that expertise where IS would. So that's the kind of the thought process we've seen that transition in the last several years. And we found through the other departments, and the reason I can speak to this is we're looking at doing something similar. We had our systems person leave, and we were looking to fill that, and we could not get the type of candidate that we were looking for. So we agreed to shift our budget to Sharon Stanley's IS budget so she could fill it with somebody who has that higher level IT knowledge base, which is what they're doing here.
So the funding is going to be there, it's just going to move from fire fund to, it's not adding new funding to IS.
It will add additional funding to IS, yes, ma'am. So,
But will it be decreased out of fire fund?
yes, it will.
So is it a wash or is it still,
You'll have a decrease in the fire fund, but it is a plus up in the general fund side. Yeah, so in total, it's a wash, but I think what we usually focus in on is the general fund, it would be a plus up.
yeah,
Yes, it would.
and they can't stay in the fire fund?
No, not the way we have it, the way they have it proposed, it would be within the IS, which would be supported by the general fund.
Okay, but that's going to be an increase in the dollar amount.
Yes,
So we're adding to the general fund when we trying to fill a gap of a shortfall.
yes. We are.
Okay. That-
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Correct me.
Commissioner Cupid.
I'm sorry. Correct me, we do have IS people at the sheriff's department, for example, do we not? And they're,
Correct, and water and other funds like that as well.
and they're funded by who?
For specifically for water, that's IS related. It's funded by the general fund.
And so is the sheriff's department, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
So I mean, this is just kind of getting it all straight back out.
It is, yes. Yes, it is. Okay. Any other questions on this slide?
CTO.
I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that. I don't know the answer to that. I will, I will get you an answer to that. I saw that today. I was like, I don't know what CTO means.
stand for.
See, there we go. Pam knows, Certified Training Officer. Thank you, Pam. Okay. All right, so this is starting with a high-level approach of basically what the 19 proposed budget looks like. You can see the 18 adopted budget was $403 million. The proposed 19 is $453 million. It's a 12.58% increase. And this is just a high-level summary of the general fund. We're going to get into some more detail with that here in a second. But this is the chairman's kind of universe, as he likes to put it, mandated, central, desired. This is what the 19 would look like as proposed. It is roughly just over 40% for mandated, and it is actually just under 40% for essential. It's like 39.5. And desired rounds out at roughly 20%. So 183 million for mandated, 179 million for essential, and 91 million for desired. All right, so here's a quick breakdown of the revenues. I just want to touch on a few points. This 19 budget does reflect a millage rate increase of 1.7 mils, which is why you see a pretty significant plus up in the property tax component. And it does include a forecasted digest increase of 4.5% in 19. That is on top of what we already received for 18. So we do build in that digest increase. Just want to hit a couple other highlights as we go down the list. Other taxes is up roughly 4.15%. That's our insurance premium taxes that we collect annually. We've seen that trend go up in the last several years. License and permits is also up 8.53%. This is our business license. Again, this is the trend that we've seen after implementing the new fees, and the collections have been good, so we've adjusted the budget accordingly. And then as we move down, we do have some other items that I would just want to touch on is if you look at the fines and forfeitures, this is a kind of unique trend for us. Usually you see this going downward. The reason it is going up is because we are now going to be adopting the Victim Witness Fund or program, and that was self-funded, and in previous years it was not adopted. So you do see a slight increase in the fines and forfeitures, but when we typically talk about fines and forfeitures, we're thinking about traffic citations, things of that nature. Those are still decreasing slightly. All right, and then I'm gonna see if there's anything else I wanted to just briefly address on this slide. The only other one is in the miscellaneous revenue category. You'll see a 12% decrease. And what we've done this year is we pulled out the cell tower monies, which are designated specifically for parks and recreation, so that those are not going to be part of the adopted budget, but when they're collected, they'll be set aside to be used for playgrounds, tennis courts, and capital items that the board approved earlier this year. So those versus setting an arbitrary amount and hoping they collect to it, we'll appropriate as it's being collected to make sure it matches dollar for dollar. So it's just a little bit different approach in that area.
Okay, so we're not gonna have any fund balance?
No fund balance appropriation this year, sir. You are out of buckets. So this is the amount of one-time monies that you need to balance the budget. So by having this as zero, this is showing that you're adopting a balanced budget using reoccurring revenues to fund reoccurring expenditures, which is what we want to have. The $19 million that you see in FY18 was when we used one-time monies to fund reoccurring operations, which is not what we want to see. This was part of the rating agency's conversation with us when we went to New York this year, is about establishing a millage rate or a reoccurring revenue source that funds reoccurring operations and getting away from the practice of using one-time monies to fund reoccurring operations. So there will be no fund balance used to fund the county's general fund operations in FY19.
Pretty thin tightrope.
Okay, any other questions on the revenue slide before we move on? Okay, all right, here we go to the expenditure side. It's the other side of the coin for the general fund. As we go through these, You can see slight increases in personnel operating. The personnel is mostly due to healthcare, pension, things of that nature. You do have some plus ups in the positions that we already covered, but you can that rounds out the 5.8%, the 50+ positions that we have identified as general fund new adds. Where you see the biggest change, and usually we don't see a change like this, but you got a 3,401% increase in capital. This is to reinstate the capital funding as we used to see it. So what that's going to comprise of is roughly $8.6 million for vehicle replacement, which is the biggest chunk of that. Then within the $15 million that the chairman proposed allocating to public safety, police has $3.1 million of body cameras to outfit the officers with body cameras. And then we have some additional capital replacement of $2 million within there that rounds out approximately the $14 million. There's a few miscellaneous items in there, but that's pretty much the gist of what's in the $14 million. As you move down, you see the debt service is relatively flat. Now, what you do see a slight increase on is the TANs interest that we borrow. The rates have gone up a little bit, and the amount that we borrowed has gone up a little bit. So we plus that up a little bit there, but the Braves debt service makes up the vast majority of that, or the stadium debt service. And then as we move down, you see some plus ups and transfers out. A big chunk of that is going to be the unified court case management system, which we're going to fund over a multiple year period. $3.5 million of that increase is due to that transfer. And then I have a detailed slide in the contingency, so I won't spend any time on that here. This is always a question we get asked, so I apologize if this is a little busy, but everybody usually wants to get an idea of what's in the contingencies. So what we have is a part of this plus up was adding $15 million to public safety. So within that, in their contingency account, you have 4.9 for sheriff and 3.1 for police. And then we go on down the line, you have shift differential and education pay, Board of Commissioners undesignated contingency. This is the standard $1 million that we put in the Board of Commissioners budget every year, where you can come back and use instead of fund balance for one-off items. And then we have the partial library restoration hours for the regional libraries. This is a 3-year phased-in approach of $800,000 for the first year. And then we have a small storm debris and death penalty contingency of $550,000, accountability courts of another $500,000, sick leave buyback, holiday pay for part-time positions. Just for board's reference, this was approved by the board in FY17 and has continued on since then. And then we have the Veterans Memorial, which is a one-time item, so this would be a one-time cost in here. And then we have the 1/3 of the stadium infrastructure payment. So this will be our second payment on this, and then we'll have one more the following year, and then we will have met our obligation there. And then we have the county manager's contingency of $30,000 to address one-off needs.
Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Question.
In the budget proposed, the 1.7 mil increase,
Yes, ma'am.
I thought we had, or whoever, the chairman had 7.5 million for police and 7.5 million for the sheriff.
That is correct. And the
Why is this only
a
eight?
portion of that is in the contingency account. So for example, the $3.1 million is a part of the $7.5 million for police. They put $3.1 million, or we put $3.1 million of that in salary contingency for their new positions, rather than allocating them between, salaries, fringe. We put it all in salary contingency, and then as they hire those positions, we move them up to fund the personnel that they need. So we don't front end load the personnel, and just in case there's vacancies and they don't need that money, it'll stay in contingency. And it's a very similar approach with the sheriff's office. They have some capital contingencies for preliminary estimate is how we loaded theirs. So they did receive the $7.5 million that the chairman talked about. So they each got the 50-50 share of that $15 million. But we loaded theirs into preliminary estimate for capital as they're refining the list of what prioritizations of the capital that they're going to be going through. So we're working with them very closely on finalizing that list. So rather than breaking it out into individual capital object codes, we put it in a contingency account for them.
Okay, so where the body cameras and the other things that are outlined
For
in the,
PD, that they've already identified body cameras, we went ahead and loaded that into capital for them. So we took that out of contingency and we loaded into the line item where they'll be purchasing the body cameras, because they have a pretty firm cost already associated with those body cameras, and we know exactly where those are going to be charged. So that was just, as we get more clean numbers and have firm costs, we'll bring them out of contingency and load it into the appropriate capital line for them to be used.
And what you're really telling us under contingencies, you're not sure the police can hire that many people. So rather than give it a hard cost where they use the money,
Right.
we call it a contingency based on what the reality will be, what they hire.
It'd definitely be based on the reality of what they hire, because there's always that ability to, you never know what type of insurance plan they're going to select. It could be a single versus family, which will move the costs and things of that nature. So as they hire each individual, we'll move that out once we know the exact individual's costing. So that way we don't put it out there kind of widespread and say, okay, well, we assume everybody's going to select a single plan when maybe you get, the 30 officers come in and they all select family plans, and then you're have a difficult situation. So we do move them out as they're hired. Yes, sir. Ms. Commissioner.
But the hiring of new officers is spread out over 2 or 3 years.
These officers would be for fiscal year 19. The officers that they're proposing in this budget would be to be hired in fiscal year 19. This would not be a phased-in approach. In their 5-year plan, there were additional officers as we came online later in the 5-year plan. So there was officers in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but this is just addressing year 1.
Okay. And what about the cars?
The cars are in there as well. We talked about capital has $8.6 million for vehicle replacement. $5 million of that is dedicated to public safety. And that would be, is my understanding, that would be a continued approach as we move forward. And we're going to have to look at how we schedule those orders to be filled. I believe the plan is to order 50 at a time, get those fitted, rolled out, then order the next 50.
And that could be over,
Well, the $5 million
A
would
period
be
of years.
fiscal year 19, and they're saying there would be additional costs in 20. Would be additional cars.
okay.
Okay.
Can you relate this slide to the prior slide?
Sure.
Thank you. So this is the last line item.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you talked about one of the line items up in the next slide in the contingency bucket for the general fund.
Okay.
What determines the placement of other items beyond the public safety items that you mentioned to be
Sure.
in this bucket here versus any of the other ones?
That's a great question. So as we kind of go down these, the shift differential and education pay would be the next big item that you see on the list. That's the same thing, is we always put it in contingency, and because we never know how many exactly they're going to use, how many staff will receive this benefit. So as they start to use that, we move it over. That way we don't budget it all there and there's not additional savings. If they don't need it, they don't receive the budget. We only move over whatever they use.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that one, because we made a policy decision about this years back.
Yes.
Has this been our budget approach to do this, to put this in contingency?
Absolutely.
And then pay that out? Okay, so as we continue this program, we'll continue to see this line item in contingency?
We will.
Okay.
And there's actually several that there's another one you'll see like that is the sick leave buyback. That's a program, and it's based on usage.
Okay.
So if we don't use it all, it stays in contingency.
Okay.
And that one's actually spread across the entire general fund. So allocating, the dollars out equally is very difficult. So we use this as the placeholder, and then once that's paid out, we move the budgets.
Okay.
Okay.
Accountability courts?
Okay, and this actually came from the sheriff's directive. I believe we're going to put a DA staff member out at the jail to help filter those people, those inmates, to the accountability courts versus going into the jail population. Try to get them early in the process.
Okay, so why are they placed in contingency?
Because we haven't hired the position yet, so we put it in contingency, and as the DA Reynolds hires that position, we'll move it into his budget, and once
Okay.
that position is filled and established, that'll be part of his reoccurring budget in the future.
Okay. You went through multiple slides that had positions associated with this budget.
Sure.
I presume none of those positions have been filled?
No, ma'am. Not until the board approves this on July 25th will these be authorized by the board.
Okay, so why are some in contingency and some aren't?
All of our new positions we show as contingency. So what we try to, or for the most part, what we do is when they're bigger chunks, like if we're hiring large groups, we throw them in contingency because the timing of filling those can vary. But if it's a 1 or 2 positions, we'll go ahead and load those into the departmental's budget. That
Okay.
way it's a little cleaner,
Okay.
and we're not having to move as much around. But when it's bigger blocks, we like to throw them in contingency.
Okay, I
But we
appreciate
do
that.
put it in that department's contingency buckets is what we try to do there.
Okay,
Okay?
Thank you. That clarifies it.
Yes, sir.
On the accountability courts, now does that include the funding that we approved already from the previously unused behavioral health court?
That was actually through the agenda item that you included. I believe
Correct.
that's already built in. This would be the reoccurring cost. So we got a ballpark figure from working with Mr. Reynolds on what the reoccurring cost would be to fund that on an ongoing basis. So we want to go ahead and load that in there. And then if it comes in a little bit less, again, once it's established, it'll be part of his reoccurring budget. So we will not see this in contingency in the future.
Well, if I recall, we funded 250K and that should have
did.
gotten it through a whole year, and yet now it's 500K?
Yeah.
I get,
Sorry.
I'll help you out here.
oh,
Thanks, sir.
please do.
What I've seen going to the accountability courts is that there are front-end savings by having people go through the courts.
Oh, I'm not disputing that, sir.
So what I'm trying to do here is front-end load that with additional revenue. And in the long run, we will save money because we have people that won't be in jail. They won't be using other county services. So I'm just trying to find a different way to direct people to these accountability courts sooner in the process. And on the long run, this will be a wash, if not save us money, because we're not having them in the system.
No, and I don't disagree.
So to me, it was just I took a round number.
Okay, so this is not just for that one DA sitting down there?
No.
No, that's
It's
a
for all the
big part.
accountability.
Correct, sir.
Exactly.
Because that's where my confusion was, because we went ahead and preloaded and funded that
One
one.
position, right.
And what we
If
did
that's
is,
500K, that's a lot.
No, that's not,
and what we did is took the one position and we basically doubled that to come up with this as we trying to address all the accountability courts.
see, that person at the jail will start directing people to the accountability courts, all right? Which means that they're gonna be needing more resources to handle these people.
Correct.
But the savings will be that we don't have them in the jail, we don't have them in our public health system, that we're having to support anyhow, so.
I was just a little.
Yeah, so that was my thought
And
process.
because this is a new program, this is an estimated figure that we worked with the chairman on.
And that's why it's contingency, we're not sure exactly how much it's gonna cost us, all right? But we can't go above that, for sure.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Any other questions on the contingency slide? Okay. All right, this is our famous stadium bond debt service slide. This shows how we're going to be funding the stadium bond in 19. As you go through these, a lot of the numbers are going to be very similar to what they were in 18. The Braves contribution is always going to be $6.1 million as we move forward through this process. Okay, one of the numbers that you see as a difference is CSSD1 is $1.6 million. It was roughly $2.5 million last year. The reason being that the board received a presentation from the hotel owners, and we were looking at reallocating the $3 room night fees to include some additional money for Cobb Travel and Tourism. We were able to absorb those additional dollars by growth in CSSD2 as well as the hotel motel tax fund. So we basically we still have to pay the $22.5 million for the next 30 years, but how we were coming up with those numbers, we see some growth in certain areas, and we were able to implement the hotel owner's proposal of providing additional funding to the Cobb Travel and Tourism. So that's kind of what you see there. So to give you an idea, CSSD2 last year was 2.5, it's 1.6, roughly $900,000 increase, which is roughly the same amount that we're proposing to provide to Cobb Travel and Tourism. That's being picked up by growth in CSSD2, as well as the hotel motel fund. Car rental tax is the same. And then you can see the general fund property taxes, actually, you've seen that come down. It was 6.4 million. So we've seen those growths in those other buckets lessen the impact on the general fund, which is what we wanted to see. And even with that reduced impact on the general fund, we are still able to give additional dollars to Cobb Travel and Tourism, is what is included in this proposed budget. Okay, and then we have, this is, again, sorry for this busy slide, but I think it's helpful to see the comparison between 18 adopted and 19 proposed. This is for all of our funds, all of our operating funds. The funds with the little asterisk by them includes general fund balance, fund balance appropriation. So as you go through those, you see in FY19, you're going to have some debt service, as we're using some monies that we've collected in prior years to finish out paying some debt payments. 911 is using some fund balance to address some of their needs. And then you have CSSD1, which we're using a slight increase in fund balance just to round that out. And then you also have some funds in here that we wanted to identify as receiving general fund subsidy. So within that list, you're going to see the parking deck fund still receives about a $300,000+ subsidy from the general fund. We did go to an automated system, but we're still going to process what those numbers are going to look like through the summer months. We're hoping they come out a little bit better. The good news with the general fund subsidy, we only send what we need. So if the parking deck has a good summer and we start to see that rate structure really come into play, where we're charging on nights and weekends and we start to bring in additional dollars, we don't send any more than the parking deck needs to meet their operating needs.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
On the general fund, you show a 12.58% increase, which is what you've been stating all along,
Yes,
yet
sir.
what I've seen bannered around in different sources, as well as one of your particular side, she showed a 34% increase.
Yes, I think what you're referring to is the property tax slide, and I'll go back to that real quickly.
Correct.
That's actually about a 30% increase in property taxes. Now, what we got to keep in mind here is that you have additional growth in 18 versus what's adopted. That's going to impact 19 plus a millage rate increase. So that's going to round out your 30% increase is basically what you're going to come to. So we had roughly a 9.14 increase in gross digest. But we budget on net. So I think the net digest increase was 7.32 or 23 in 18. So we budgeted a 4.5. So you already had some additional increase above and beyond that. Now, if the board approves the millage rate increase of 1.7 mils, that's going to go on top of the 18 increase. And then what we do is budget an additional increase in 19. So when you put all those together, you are going to be looking at an increase over FY18's adopted by roughly 30%. Okay? But the overall budget is 12.58 total increase to the general fund, as stated here, and then again on the summary slide here. But that is the total increase.
I understand it, but you see how it could be confusing.
It is.
Thank you.
Well, what you're saying though is that the property taxes, it's a real number, 30%.
Sure.
But in totality, it's offset by other revenue sources.
That's correct.
All right, which goes to the issue of the millage rate.
Yeah.
If we didn't have these other sources of income, then we'd have to have a millage rate that would equate to 30%.
Absolutely.
But we don't, because we have other sources of income that are working out in our advantage.
Absolutely. And you can see, I mean, the property tax is well over half of the budget, but you do have decreases in other revenue categories, which bring you down to the 10%. And again, one of the big items that stands out is the fund balance that we used in FY18. That's $19 million off the top that will not be available to us in 19.
Right.
Okay. I just want to walk through these. I won't touch on all of these because I don't want to keep you here all day. But the overall for the governmental operating funds, you see 11.26% increase, which is pretty similar to what we saw at the general fund level. So there's not any major changes here. The ones that stand out though is, as you're looking at these, is CSSD2, which is towards the bottom. That's a 31% increase. That's due to growth in the area. The millage rate is proposed to be exactly the same as it was in FY18. That is due to the growth in the area. SFSSD, Six Flags Special Service District at the bottom, 30% increase due to the growth in the area, not a proposed millage rate change. This is simply due to the growth in the area as we go through these. And then, let's see, touch on debt service. This is a slight decrease over what it was last year because the only bonds we have outstanding now in FY18 is the current parks bonds that the board issued last April. So the bonds that we are hopefully getting poised to spend down the remaining money is the only bonds we have outstanding that are covered under the debt service fund, which is why you'd expect to see that decrease. And then with that, most of the other ones are pretty flat. The claims fund, this is our healthcare, workers' comp, things of that nature. Obviously, as healthcare goes up, claims fund goes up, healthcare costs go up, so that's why you see a pretty good increase there. 911, we saw a pretty good plus up there due to the fee structures, the changes going to the $1.50, and so we'd expect to see that. Most of the other funds are relatively flat. The ones that we show positive growth in, again, hotel motel tax, strong economy, strong collections. This is another positive as we move forward. Okay, moving on. These are our business type funds: golf course, solid waste, transit, water. Again, we subsidize the solid waste fund for post-closure care as required by law. We really have little to no control over that. Transit, again, heavily subsidized by the general fund. We already talked about the proposed increase in the transit subsidy. And then water is currently proposed to use additional fund balance appropriations. I know we have an agenda item tomorrow to look at the fees for water. If that's approved, expect the water number to change as we go forward in this process, because this, again, is under the assumption that there's no fee increases to date. So 'cause we didn't want to be premature, because we don't want to see where the board votes on that tomorrow. And then if that does pass, these numbers will change, meaning that they will not use additional fund balance or nearly as much fund balance appropriation to move forward.
But I thought you said we were gonna have to increase our transit subsidy, but yet the transit's flat.
Transit subsidy is going up because you're losing other revenues. You're losing the grant revenues. So transit is basically flat. It's just going to cost you more general fund dollars to maintain the same level of operations that we did in FY18, because we don't have the operating grants.
Yeah, but we're gonna be using, in the proposed in 19 is they're gonna be using $22.5 million of general fund money for the transit system, right?
That's correct.
So that shows me that we're actually spending less than we did last year.
It is a slight decrease, yes.
But
How'd that happen?
because of transit, we were using grants to do that.
I know, but my
Right.
point is that I thought we lost grants, so I would think that our requirement would go up.
No, the operating costs are relatively flat. The difference is let's say you get three sources of revenue to fund transit.
Right.
You get the fare box,
Right.
you get the grants, and the general fund subsidy.
Right.
The costs are relatively the same. The only difference is you lost grant revenue and increased general fund subsidy to still pay for the same level of service.
I'm just looking at the number.
Sure.
$22.5 million is what we're gonna be using in general fund money.
No, that's total transit, 22.5.
Oh, okay,
That's
all right.
that's
Okay.
everything. That includes
Includes
grants,
revenue.
fare box, and general fund
Okay,
subsidy.
all right, that's,
Okay.
Isn't it around 16
Yes,
million in
yes,
general fund?
around 16 million.
okay. all right.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see, moving on. These are our capital budgets. These fluctuate year to year as we have different capital needs, specifically stadium capital maintenance. This is pretty flat. We have a 30-year contract of what we're going to pay in. Please keep in mind that the $2.5 million that you see here, the county is obligated for half of that. The other half comes from the Braves. So we just wanted to show you that is per the schedule that the board's approved, but the county only puts in half of that amount. The Braves put in the other half. Yes, Commissioner?
Why is there any variation in that amount?
It is an escalating schedule to a point, and then it comes back down. So I believe it has a slight step up as we go forward. I mean, you see it went from roughly to what, 1,230,000 last year was the county's contribution versus what we have this year is a slight step up. But the schedule that the board approved does have those slight step ups built in, but it is a gradual step up.
Okay, thank you.
We also have a cap on our portion.
We do. It's capped altogether. So both parties have to abide by the schedule, and nobody can use the funds unless the Board of Commissioners, the Braves, and the Cumberland or the Gallery Authority approve the use. So before any monies can be spent out of this fund, all three parties have to agree that it's an approved use of the money. So both parties contribute. It'll be sitting in an investment account earning interest until there's a need arises. It'll be presented to the board, the authority, and the Braves to have a discussion of how is it approved. Okay. And then you see one of the biggest step ups here that you see in the capital projects fund. Most of this is the unified court case management system that we talked about here earlier. So you went from 8.8 to 12.4. This is $3.5 million of the first year of the unified court case management system. And then water projects, these fluctuate year to year as we move forward. And that is all we have for you. Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Burrow.
Yes.
The water, RE&I,
Yes, ma'am.
isn't that out of the water fund, not
Yes.
the general fund?
All of these have their own funding sources. So for
Right.
example, yes, the water RE&I fund and the system development fees all pertain specifically to water and do not receive general fund dollars whatsoever. Okay. The capital projects fund is a little bit different. It receives funding from a variety of different funds as they pay into this capital projects funds for long-term projects. General fund pays in for the unified court case management system. Water has some money that they pay in. Fire pays in for different things such as PC replacements and things of that nature.
Okay.
Right.
Commissioner Cupid?
Yes, along those lines, Bill, help me understand. I thought I saw a prior line item for about 15 million for capital.
Yes.
What would those go towards versus that amount?
Okay, so I will get back to that. I think I passed it. Okay, so yes, in this line item, this is general fund capital. So this is capital that we anticipate being spent in fiscal year 19. So the capital projects fund is for more long-term projects or reoccurring capital projects. So for example, the unified court case management system, general fund's going to pay in, four payments of $3.5 million or their approximation. And that will take multiple years to fully implement and get off the ground. Whereas like this $15 million is specifically for vehicles, body cameras that we anticipate buying in fiscal year 19.
Okay.
Okay.
Was there effort to tie in a capital maintenance plan or to begin to fund one for the
Yes.
county through this budget, and where would we see that?
Okay, that's a great question. So the vehicles are definitely part of that capital plan. That's a big part of it because we've had years where we didn't have any vehicle acquisition whatsoever.
Okay.
Another part of it is we reinstated an additional $2 million for capital replacement within this $14 million that you see here. And then we have one-off items such as the body cameras that actually we anticipate some reoccurring costs as we move forward with those as well.
Okay.
So this is starting to address that. This is not going to fix it overnight, and I think that was part of the plan, is this was a gradual approach
Okay.
to get to that point that we're looking for.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I got a couple. Is Bill, ask for Bill Shelton to be here? Is he here? Hey, Bill, could you come on up for a second, please? Because I can. I think you know what the question is. It's about the reintroduction of the 4 teams to address the right-of-way mowing and garbage pickup and things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
All right,
This, we're proposing 20 new employees
right.
to offset it won't offset right-of-way contracts, will eliminate right-of-way contracts and totally handle right-of-way maintenance in-house. Right now, this returns us to pre-recession days where we were able to mow and keep the county immaculate in 06, 07, 08. Right now, we're having challenges with our contractor. He's considerably behind. He can't keep up. He's in liquidated damages stage. His contract was 60-day mowing. Right now, he's running 75, 80 days. This will return in-house mowing to county crews where we can control the schedule, and this will be a 12-month year employees instead of a 6-month. Contractors right now are 6-month. We're spending roughly $1.1 million for contracts. This proposal we have, the 20 new employees, $1.4 million, which is a 12-month employee instead of a 6-month. Then we're asking for an additional $400,000 worth of equipment to fully, supply these with crew trucks, equipment, and all to maintain the county. Right now, our right-of-way request for maintenance, we're running about 800 work orders behind. That's half of our backlog of 1,900 work orders. It's our most requested service, litter pickup, grass cutting, and we're getting into safety issues now because of the grass side obstructions at intersections, which we take care of. We're having to supplement the contractor right now to eliminate safety issues. So as you see riding around the county right now, it's not pretty. The grass is tall. The litter is pretty prevalent. We're picking up litter every Saturday, 2 crews. We picked up over probably right at 100,000 pounds of litter already this year. Just our crews, not counting what the contractor picks up. So this proposal will return us back to pre-recession days, and in 6-month time, I think these crews will have the county back to looking like it did pre-recession days.
So it's your argument that these teams would not just be for right-of-way mowing and guard, they'd also be dealing with other issues during the non-grass growing seasons.
Well, we have found that in the off-season, we do right-of-way trimming where trees are growing out into the right-of-way. We haven't done this in years past. We haven't had the funding to perform this type of work. We do have 2 new right-of-way tractors that'll be here in November. That should help, but in the off-season, we do catch-up work. We do work that we can't do during the regular season because of safety issues. You'll see the growth that's growing out over the curb that don't present a safety issue, but they do if the cars are having to go around. But we have not done right-of-way trimming winter full-time since '07, '08. We used to have funding in there to handle right-of-way trimming, in which we don't. The only thing we're addressing right now on right-of-way trimming are safety issues. And I think we're running about 200 work orders of safety-sensitive issues that our crews, every bit of our right-of-way crews are handling safety issues at this time.
Sure.
Bill, do you have a copy of this? Bill, do you have it up there?
It's the numbers you gave Commissioner Ott for what your team's gonna
I do
cost you.
not. I didn't break it down. I apologize.
I have some questions as far as, the way that was explained was our crews would go in between the 45-day or 60-day rotation that the contractor is on, but you're saying that we would do away with the private contractor and each district would have its own crew for mowing, maintenance, potholes, everything?
That is correct. You're absolutely correct. That's a good question. We will totally eliminate contractors maintaining right-of-ways, which we're funded like 1.1 million this year. The 1.4 is what we're requesting for 20 employees for 12 months. Contractors only a 6 month. They only work 6 months. We supplement them now only if necessary, only address safety issues. But
Okay, but of that 3.6 million total,
no, ma'am. It's only gonna be 1.4 million for the employees and a
For
one-time
in-house.
expense of 400,000 for equipment. So you're talking 1.4 million for a year's worth of employees instead of a 6-month contract.
So the 1.9 goes away.
Right, correct.
Okay,
We'll
but that's
totally
not-
eliminate right-of-way contracts. Now, these 20 employees, there'll be 5 per district. There'll be a crew leader, 2 equipment operators, and 2 crew workers. None of these positions require CDL. In the past, right now, we're challenged to find CDL workers. We have not been challenged to find non-CDL employees. You know, the paying class up to pay over $13 an hour for an entry-level crew worker. We're able to find good crew workers, entry-level employees right now. We've done so in the past. We just hired 3. Our traffic control crew for SunTrust Park, they were non-CDL entry-level. We hired those instant. So I don't see a challenge hiring non-CDL employees. The challenge has been, as with other departments, CDL. Our pay scale does not equal what the private sector, because there's a high demand for CDL drivers right now. Everybody's looking for CDL drivers.
So how long is our contract with the companies?
It generally runs from mid-April to October. They have 6 months in order to, they get rain days. Right now, they've had several rain days, but usually it runs 6 months.
Okay,
From
so
start
for
to finish.
1.5 million, you can do all of that in-house?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's not, it's asking for 3.6 million total on the DOT request.
There's other positions as part of that 3.6, right? That's
No,
the
that
plan-
must,
No.
that
That's
must
the
be
planning
for all
positions, isn't
DOT.
That's
That
all
included
crew.
keeping the right-of-way maintenance contract, which he said we're getting rid
Oh,
of.
we're gonna get rid of that, okay.
So it's really gonna be 1.5,
Okay,
which we need, that's,
can I have my list back?
That's
Sure.
okay.
Commissioner Cupid, absolutely.
I've got the exact numbers for the 20 employees, 1.388 million. That's for a year. That's benefits and all. And then the equipment is just under 4. It's 378, which is a one-time purchase of the equipment
Yeah,
and
'cause
crew
it
trucks.
says
So
crew
you're,
leaders,
you're
equipment.
roughly 300,000 more than the contractor. But instead of a 6-month service, you're getting a 12-month service. And we can control schedule and we can control quality of work and how they work.
Okay. Commissioner Cupid.
Yes. Bill, Last year, we had a presentation from all the departments, and you came and presented and showed us a pretty significant number of outstanding work orders. And so I'm gathering from what you're sharing today, you said we're about at 1,900, and you said you expect in 6 months for that to be either significantly dropped or eliminated. Can you help me understand moving, you know, moving to this type of construct, where we're going to be with that outstanding list?
Okay, right now, half of our work orders that are outstanding are right-of-way issues. Trimming, litter pickup, graffiti, issues such as that. We get these four crews and we 20 employees. I look for that backlog of work order for right-of-way maintenance to be even. I think in 6 months' time, we catch up on the right-of-way.
You think you can catch up on what's outstanding?
I think I'm really confident that we can in 6 months' time. I think the 20 employees will make a big difference in the aesthetics of the county.
Okay. And having a crew like this would allow us to be responsive to day-to-day requests, but there's some things that are done on a regular basis, like right-of-way mowing done. We had gotten down to 21 days, now we're at like, how many days? 60 days for some areas. With this type of crew, I mean, we're expecting some type of on-demand response, but what would be a regular right-of-way schedule for some of the, not for some, but for the existing list of roadways that we have under the current contract?
That is a great question. You know, the year before last, we were trying to do a 30-day, and then we had sidewalk cycles in there, which were every 22 days, and meetings were every 14 days. We're going to return to that cycle, to that schedule with these employees here.
To the 22 days for sidewalks?
22-day sidewalks, 30-day shoulders, and a 14-day median. Right now, we're at a 60-day shoulder, 21-day median, and then a 21-day for roundabouts and welcome signs. So we're going to increase the service mowing in the whole county.
Sounds good, Bill.
That's with litter pickup included too. I might add that.
I mean,
Buying crates of 5-hour.
okay. Looking
That's all I
forward
can
to
figure.
it. I'm
Well-
glad to hear that. This is our, I mean, this is the number one issue of complaints that I get from constituents.
This is
the
our
condition
number
of
one
our-
issue too. We received the most complaints. Friday when I left here, we had 1,800 work orders outstanding. I opened up this morning, we have 1,969. And 90% are for right-of-way issues. I mean, people see the grass is tall. I mean, it's not, it doesn't look good. 06, 07, we were flat with right-of-way backlog. Zero right-of-way backlog, 06, 07, 08. So this returns us back to the good old days.
I'm trusting you, Bill. I'm serious, I guess, because I've been dealing with this issue since being here, and I felt like we had made headway, and we're getting back to this. I'm kind of pressing you on this, because if you're not asking for the right number, we need the right number. Because when I leave here and I go talk to my constituents about this matter, I'm going to be communicating with this budget the conditions that we can return to. So I need to, I want some, understanding that this, what you're sharing is really going to be not just possible, but probable with these crews that we're going to.
Well, timing is everything, and I ask for your patience. It's not going to happen overnight. You approve the budget, you approve the 20, we hire them during the winter, we get them trained, we start working towards trimming right away. April, we're going to start earlier than we have been in the past. We usually start mowing in mid-April. We're going to start mowing in March when the wheat starts growing.
Excellent.
That will give us the benefit of starting when we want to,
Okay.
and not when we have to use a contractor and limited on resources.
Okay, so the 6-month time frame that you say that we can get out of this backlog, are you talking 6 months from March of next year, once they're hired and start mowing?
6 months from when you approve this budget and we put them on staff. When we hire them from that point on, if the budget's approved October 1 and it goes into effect October 1, we begin hiring process in, we get them on board, And from the time they're hired, 6 months, we'll have the schedule, we'll have the right-of-ways, and we'll be back on track to have the county looking like it did
Even
before.
during the winter months, it's,
Yes, ma'am. I'm pretty confident. We've done it before. We've done it in the past, and I see no reason we can't continue that.
thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, I've had a request on Baker Road for 3 years now. Will you get to that one?
I read that on your Facebook page. Yes, sir. It's on the list because I'm.
I know it's been on the list,
I read
sir.
that. I saw it was the second comment on your page.
Seeing as how there's trees growing out of the gutter, I just thought maybe we'd ought to maybe get out there. I mean, if you'll give me a weed whacker, I'll help, but
See me after the meeting
Yes,
and
gotcha,
I can
sir.
take
Thank
care
you.
of you.
Question. Please clarify that this 3.6 million includes the contractor at 1.9 and the in-house at 1.5.
It does, and we'll clarify with DOT just to make sure, because that's what we received direction on after the liaison commissioner meeting with Commissioner Ott, is that that's what we wanted to have included. So we'll get you clarification on that, but that's exactly what we have shown, is the contract plus the staff.
Okay, so this total 6.8 million for DOT is the transit subsidy and the other things listed.
Yes, ma'am.
But if we're going from 1.9 with the contractor to 1.5 in-house, that's a savings.
It would be a savings if we can eliminate the contract. Yes, ma'am. So we'll clarify that with Erica and also with Commissioner Ott, because
Okay.
that's what we were directed to include, the right-of-way mowing maintenance contract as you see on your sheet, plus the additional staff. I don't know if it was because of the overlap or what, but we'll get you clarification on that.
Okay.
Because the contractor goes through October, you said, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
So he does go into the next year.
He does.
So there's a partial cost
There
there.
would be a partial overlap,
But
especially.
once that contract's up, then that'll be replaced by Bill's team.
Correct.
So actually that 1.9 number will probably be a little bit less.
Should be less, yes, sir.
Right.
Correct.
But we'll get you clarification on that, ma'am.
I think some of that contract may include striping. So that's include the striping, lane striping and all. They've always included that in one contract sum. And I don't remember that amount.
I don't off the top of my head.
50,000. So it made that, some of that total may be striping, road striping. So that may be some of the, but it's not a significant amount.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
All right, now Al Curtis. Al here.
Good
All right.
afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Back when I was a young lieutenant, I was a motor transport officer for a battalion, so I have a pretty good idea that you gotta have people to maintain vehicles. I need you to tell me, we bought 276 more police cars, right? Roughly, more or less?
That is correct.
And this budget buys another 100, okay? And then we have some other recapitalization in vehicles that we're gonna be, like the animal service is gonna get some vehicles, stuff like that.
And also, Bill just referenced he needed tractors.
There you go. All right, so my question is, and I understand that there's a program that when we get the new garage, part of the program is that we were using part of those big garage bays to bring in services that they would reimburse us, they would pay us for their services.
Yes, Chairman, Commissioner Ott has been an advocate of insourcing.
Right.
Which we've been doing a lot of insourcing
Okay.
before he brought that up on the motorcycles and some other smaller municipalities that didn't have the infrastructure and everything to support their vehicles the way they should. So he has pushed that to the forefront as being a method to bring in, of course, additional revenue.
Some revenue, I understand it. Now, but my real question is, did we bring in additional people to maintain those 276 police cars?
That is a negative, sir.
So why is it that we think that we can do even more with another 100 police cars? So I need some straight answers here.
Well-
Do we or do we not need more people in fleet to maintain the vehicles that we're purchasing?
Sir, Chairman, we needed more people when we first brought in those 270 vehicles, additions. These were additions to the fleet to support the take-home program.
So the four that is in the budget right now that I've asked to put in there, right, that's clearly not gonna be enough, but it's a start, right?
That is correct.
All right, so would you have any argument if we gave you budgeted 4 additional positions to help to maintain the police and the new vehicles that we're bringing in, or the existing fleet? All right,
No problem at all, because right now, currently, we're behind replacement schedule. So right now, we're maintaining vehicles that should already be off the road, which is totally impacting our operational budget.
all right.
And of course, we're gonna be adding new tractors if Bill get the tractors and other equipment. And that equipment, one thing about equipment that a lot of people don't realize, it costs a lot more to maintain equipment than it does cars and trucks. The parts are more expensive, and as far as the equipment we have right now, much of it is over 10 to 15 to 20 years old. A lot of the parts are not even available anymore. We're having to fabricate parts. That takes time from a technician, and it, of course, costs a lot more as well.
All right, could you give me your experience or your knowledge of what other police departments do? Who else has a police fleet as large as ours?
Gwinnett County, Fulton County, DeKalb County.
Okay, and how do they maintain their vehicles? Do they outsource, or do they do the in-house maintenance?
They have in-house maintenance, but they have a adequate vehicle replacement fund set up every year that some of the departments pay into, others are part of the general fund, and they set it up so every year they replace 100 to 300 vehicles and equipment.
Okay, and I understand also that you're looking at realigning the fleet so that we don't necessarily, we have cars that we can give to other departments and they can use them on a part-time basis rather than having them permanently assigned to them. Are we looking at that system too?
Well, we've been looking at that for a while. Basically, that's looking at vehicle allocations and looking at vehicles that are not utilized, which is a utilization process. We're looking at vehicles that don't go 300 to 5,000 miles a year. That's a standard practice through the fleet industry, where you look and see if these vehicles are not driven, then they need to be consolidated into a pool, which we already currently have a pool in fleet, which is highly utilized. And that would definitely eliminate some of the vehicles that are stagnant, spread out throughout the whole county that are sitting, because those vehicles are just accumulating monies, because every time they come into the fleet with no utilization, the tires are flat spotted. When everybody knows that when you don't use something, it starts to deteriorate. And we run into a lot of that with some of the vehicles that do come in, because we adamantly push out that these vehicles need to have PMs done on them. Preventive maintenance allows us to be able to catch any major issues before they become, before the vehicle breaks down.
Well, we should have some program though that we shouldn't have vehicles sitting around for one thing. All right, I understand that we don't use 100% utilization, but certainly if they're sitting around long enough where we're having issues, inflation on tires, then maybe we need to be looking at the allocation or whether we need these vehicles at all and other ways to provide services without having to buy new cars. Because, I mean, every new car is going to cost us at least $25,000. I haven't seen a truck that we're buying that's less than $30,000.
That is correct.
So I guess they're not watching the CarMax commercials like I am, but I'm sure there's other reasons we're doing that.
Well, we have a lot of opportunity that we can look into vehicle utilization, because one thing that I'd like to say is this: if we can give fleet the teeth to bite into this and ensure that these vehicles that are not being utilized are being able to be brought back in and then funneled out to departments that can actually utilize them, that is the proper way to do any particular type of vehicle program.
So what kind of teeth would you need to do that?
Just the word. The word just says fleet has that we can do this without pushback, well, from departments saying we need this vehicle, we use it all the time, and then we look back at the actual analytics on it, and the vehicle hadn't driven 5,000
All right,
miles.
so why don't you bring us back, we'll do a future work session on this. Why don't you bring back that program? Okay, that's what it looks like, so we can have some idea what you're talking about.
Okay,
I mean, obviously, we want to support you, but we also want to make an informed decision here.
correct.
So if you would work with Rob here to put together, you know, some work session about these analytics, about what you're trying to accomplish, and because I'm sure there's cost efficiencies, if not cost savings, in there,
Definitely.
and those and cost avoidance. That all adds up, at, you know, $100 here, $100 there. After all, adds up to a lot of money. So let's take a look at that and work with Commissioner County Manager Hosak and then your boss, all right? And let's bring something back here to talk to the board about.
And just to reiterate, as far as the positions, those 4 positions would definitely help keep up with the backlog and to allow us to, to continue to progress and be, a viable maintenance facility and keep up with all the vehicles that we actually run
Okay.
with right now.
All right, thanks, Al.
Chairman, if I may
Sure,
ask,
Commissioner
yes,
Tisbey.
excuse me, Mr. Curtis. A similar question to what I asked Bill Shelton. You said that there is an outstanding backlog. Having 4 additional positions would help you. How does that help you with the backlog?
It helps us in quite a few different ways. The PM turnaround, we have different KPIs that we actually manage. The PM turnaround allows us to be able to get the vehicles out in the PM's turnaround within 45 minutes.
Okay,
So that allows the vehicles to be back in service to the police officer, to the departments in a very timely manner.
okay. I guess maybe I'll be more specific. Is this the right number to get us out of that backlog?
It's a start, like the chairman said.
So okay. What helps you be able to get out of that backlog?
The backlog of vehicles coming in,
Whatever you said, I'm going off of what I'm hearing. You're telling me that there is a backlog of vehicles that need to be serviced. There are 4 crew workers here. How does that help you to be able to get out of the situation you're in? Because this is a backlog in our existing circumstance. There are going to be additional vehicles and equipment.
Correct.
So is this just, is this a Band-Aid or is this a fix? What is it? Or is it somewhere in between?
it's, I'm not going to say it's a Band-Aid or a complete fix. It's not
Okay.
going to be a complete fix until we actually can manage from 50 technicians to 1 piece of equipment is what the industry standards is especially played into.
Okay, then that helps me. So help me with that data. You said 50 pieces of equipment per technician. So where are we?
We're about 118 pieces of equipment to 1 technician.
So having additional 4 gets that ratio down to,
Additional probably 8, based on the heavy-duty equipment that we actually manage and maintain, because the heavy-duty equipment takes more man-hours, more time to work on. So roughly about 8 technicians to make industry standards. But it's kind of hard to do that, to meet that industry standard. That's in a perfect world, and we're not there.
okay. So if you benchmark other counties that are comparable to us, what has there been, where are they? How many?
They're a little bit better than us in technician-wise. As far as ratios, they're maybe 80 to 90 probably
Okay.
per technician.
Okay, so having the additional 4 gets us to where?
The
Yes.
additional 4, that gets us to, I'm gonna have to come back with you with that.
And that's fine.
information.
I'm just trying to get a clear sense of how we are starting to get to where we're trying to get to. And understanding if the numbers that you're giving us, is that helping us in with current day statistics, or is it taking into account the projected number of vehicles and equipment we're expected to get? So we
It's
need-
taken
need-
into
you know,
account of that because we already, like I said, when we added the 270 pieces of equipment for the police, we were already, backlogged or didn't have enough technicians according to those standards. But the 4 will actually get us to a point where it'll be a lot better managed, be able to get vehicles in and out a lot faster, and have where the technicians are not having 5 to 8 work orders per technician that may carry over from time to time.
Okay. All right, I'll just communicate with you offline. I'm just curious to know, and again, we are taking great strides with this budget, but are we going to anticipate that there needs to be a continuing buildup to get to something that's a manageable workload so that we don't continue to have these extreme ratios or what I'm hearing, a backlog that's keeping us from moving some of these vehicles forward?
And one of the key things too is an adequate vehicle replacement schedule.
That's something you talked about
That's the
too.
biggest thing, because if we're replacing vehicles on a standard cycle, then our repair work orders are gonna be minimized.
Okay.
Because we're actually basically just doing oil changes, rotating tires, and doing some of the basic maintenance. But when we start holding vehicles for a long period of time, then you start getting into engines, transmissions, front ends, rear ends, and so on and so forth, which impacts the budget and also takes a lot longer to facilitate and get out of the shops.
So what does our program look like? Do we have a program?
And,
Do we have a vehicle replacement program?
well, previously, we had not had a vehicle replacement program. We've been using fund balance to fund vehicles.
Today, do we have one?
This budget starts one.
That's
Okay.
That's what
Budget
we're
starts
working
one.
into the budget right now.
Okay, and you said an ideal world, well, you talked about some of the other agencies. This budget chairman helps us, or
Correct.
Ala gets us to replacing how many a year?
Roughly, I think with the police, 6 million was allocated, or planning to be allocated. That'll get them roughly about 109 vehicles.
Okay, great. Okay.
And that's a really good start. And that'll,
Actually, it's 5 million.
I-
So, nice try, though. Good try, Sam.
yeah.
Well, okay.
Are there
That'll
any
be,
questions?
that'll be 50 vehicles.
Be 50?
Right, okay.
Thank you.
All right, just a couple more questions. All right. I've been talking to, I do mingle with the employees, mingle with Mike, and I also do ICOB videos. And I let them know that I would not be able to fund a merit raise this year, okay? I mean, they're very clear about that because we needed to get better in other areas first. But I was committed to looking at such an option, in the next budget. How much, can you give me a rough idea of what a merit raise would cost for budget-wise?
Roughly a 3% merit for the general fund would be about $5 million.
$5 million. So we would have to find $5 million next year's budget to do that. Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right. I need a number to play with here because I'll be looking very hard at doing that. I think we did something with the paying class study. We got 45%, and now we need to address the whole population. And I just want to make sure that nothing else, the employees know that I'm still thinking about this. I haven't forgotten about it, but I have to also work with the numbers.
Chairman, may I follow up on
Sure.
that? What's the millage equivalent to 5 million?
So that's going to be in that about just under 0.2. I believe so.
Yeah, under 0.2, right.
Okay.
0.2, exactly.
All right, a couple other things. I sent you all an email last week about the fire fund, and the reason I was arguing for perhaps adjusting the fire fund is that they have a 5-year plan, and they had a 5-year plan last year, and I just wanted to make sure that the millage rate that they would get would correspond to the 5-year plan. All right, and Bill told me that they would be getting about $3 million more because of the tax digest increase. And because of the fact that the fire fund is taxed against the new assessed value of their property, and they don't get a homestead exemption. So I want you to think about that, okay? That's what my logic was. I believe that we need to practice budget discipline here. All the departments have a 5-year plan, and we should budget to that plan. And I don't believe that everybody should, you should get rewarded because the tax digest does better. That would be nice in a real world, but the bottom line is we're looking at every single tenth of a mill rate right now to help us, make sure that we only ask the taxpayer for the exact amount of money that we're gonna need from them. Sure, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, the other part was, I understand that the Parks bond is also bringing in more revenue than we anticipated.
Yes, sir.
And I mentioned to the board, I had no amount set on that, but I would be open to a lower millage rate for the Parks bond to match, what it is that we planned on bringing back every 10 years. So I'd like you all to be thinking about that over the next couple of weeks to see if that's something you'd be wanting to do, to lower the millage rate to, again, we only ask the taxpayer for the exact amount of money that we budget for, and not $1 more. So, Commissioner Burrow.
I'd just like to point out that I know with the decrease in the fire fund, you're not comparing apples to apples and an offset on the general fund, but it will help some
Yes.
because of the cities included in the fire fund. It's different, kind of like the special service district that we're talking about for police. Taking it out of the general fund, it's going to need a higher millage in the special service district because of the House Bill 489 in the cities that have their own. So I do think we could get to a number that we know that the general fund would maybe decrease with the comparable to the fire fund and the parks fund debt service. As far as overall millage, it'll be less than what we're proposing.
Yeah, but the danger there is that I'm trying to have a millage rate that's sustainable for the future. And the 1.7 for me was that number, that I don't have to come back again next year and ask for a different millage rate. If we lower that, then it jeopardizes right away any merit raise, okay, right off the top. And secondly, we have a 5-year plan that it might jeopardize. So I think we need to stay apples with apples and oranges with oranges. And I think that the reason I'm just asking for the change in the fire fund is simply budget discipline. They said last year they needed $91 million, and that's what, by adjusting the millage rate down to 2.86, that's what they get. And the advantage there is that the taxpayer saves a few bucks.
Going back to the parks bond or the bond fund, if we lower it, then that will continue the elongated repayment plan that we have in place, which is what, 25, 30 years?
I believe we have, I'm gonna look to Buddy, is it
Which plan?
10?
The fire fund?
Parks.
We have
Parks is
5
10.
left? 5 or 6 left? We'll get you the exact number.
Okay, so it's, that was on 10 years, not the 20 years like we do on most
That's
funds.
correct. By not issuing it initially, you still have,
So if we left it as it is, we'd pay that off a whole lot sooner.
that's true. And the rollback rate, just for the board's information, the current millage rate in the debt fund is 0.13.
Correct.
The rollback rate is 0.123, so it's less than a, tenth of a mil reduction, or 100th of a mil reduction. So it's a small reduction, but as you said, Commissioner, if you leave it at 0.13, that fund, we're legally only allowed to collect property taxes for debt that we have outstanding. So if you left it at 0.13, you'd get there a little sooner than you would if you rolled it back. I think that was to your point.
Yeah, and I'd like to know what those numbers are so we can make an informed decision with Chairman's
Absolutely.
proposal.
We'll get you the debt schedule.
If we
and,
leave it where it is, when will we pay it off? If we reduce it, when will we pay it off? Because I'm all for getting rid of it as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
because, and that's the requirement by law, is once you've collected that amount has to go to zero. That millage rate would have to go to zero, or you issue new debt. That's the only reason that it could be anything above zero, is you had additional debt outstanding.
Yes, Chairman, yes. And following up to the chairman's point about stabilizing the millage rate to be 1.7, without a merit increase of 0.2 this year, how are we able to stabilize that millage rate and still accommodate 0.2 for next year?
Well, go ahead.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Because we know, let's use an example like the police cars, all right? We know we're gonna buy 100 police cars this year. But we're not gonna buy 100 police cars next year. So that frees up resources in the budget that we can reallocate towards that point, for that merit raise. There are gonna be other one-time purchases this year in this budget that we're not gonna buy next year. So what'll happen is each of the departments will probably have to pay into that merit raise, but they're gonna, because they're buying things with one-time money this year, but it's part of recurring cost, they will have the money to contribute to that 0.2.
My only concern is that there's still 1.9 mils of outstanding requests from staff that haven't been accommodated in that 1.7 number.
Correct.
So we're taking into account those requests not being continuing requests into the next year, that anything that we don't fund this year is just automatically going to go to merit. Well, what we might see are ballooning of outstanding issues by not addressing some of the other requests that are not on the table.
That's a good point, but again, it's one of those balances, how much can the taxpayer tolerate? So to me, the 1.7 was a sustainable amount that would take care of the 5-year plan. And remember, Commissioner, I'm confident. It's a stronger word than optimistic. I'm confident that the tax digest is going to continue to increase because of what the proposed development that I'm seeing in the Cumberland Special Service District. It is, even with the homestead exemption, we're going to generate additional revenue from the tax digest increase. So even if I leave it at 1.7, remember, the issue every year is we have to advertise the rollback rate. because we bring in extra money, even with the homestead exemption. That extra money is going to help us fund the merit raise. I know. I'm confident. You're only you say you're prayerful, but I'm confident, all right? Because there's enough in the budget, there are enough one-time programs in the budget where I'm confident that the staff will be willing to work with us to fund that merit
I
raise.
hope the staff is confident. I hope staff is confident because, and I've shared this before, I've never worked for any organization and felt confident by not getting rewarded for the amount of effort that I put in. That, so saying it and doing something to reflect it are two different things. And
Well, I'll tell you why I think the staff should be confident. First of all, we did fund the paying class study. Second of all, this budget starts to bring back resources that they badly wanted and been able to ask for now. So we're giving them, I think, enough indicators that we share with them what they're trying to accomplish. But we're the ones that have to deal every day with the voting public. And we have to find a balance where they're willing to tolerate a certain amount of tax raises, where the pushback's so hard that we don't accomplish anything because we go over the top when we ask for.
I hear, and you and I have talked offline to this, and I could talk to the public till I'm blue in the face. The voting public, if they're in the working class, they understand that people don't put in much effort when they're not rewarded for their performance. And, and I have to put myself in their shoes and recognize my day as being part of a working class and not in the decision to pull to be making these type of budgetary decisions, that the way you incentivize employee goes a long way in accomplishing any goal that you have. And if we're losing valuable employees, or if we're not keeping their confidence as they're working, then the things that we are thinking are going to cost one amount end up costing us more because we don't have them being confident in how they're functioning. So that is a grave concern that I have, that
Sure.
we can fund other things and not look to how we have not compensated employees, or we compensate employees via merit once out of the past 2 or 3 years.
Sure.
It's just, it is difficult to believe, it's particularly in light of how well this county has been performing.
Well, there's one thing that I wish I'd done. I've signed a number of 5, 10, 15, and 20-year certificates over the last week, and I've been keeping a tally, and I wish I had brought it down. But I can safely say that over the last week, I've signed literally hundreds of years of service by employees in this county. And there are a number of 20-year, I think I signed 20-year certificates, more 15-year certificates. I hope that what the staff realizes, and I hear your concern, I really do, Commissioner, because, one time I was a lieutenant that lived from paycheck to paycheck. So I know where they're coming from in many cases. But I hope they see that what this board has been doing over the last 18 months is that we're giving them reason to stick with us, and that we hear their concerns, and we do want to incentivize them. And we're going to find ways, this budget is the first step, the first big step, that we can start to show them that not only do we talk about trying to find ways to incentivize, we're actually going to provide ways to incentivize them. Sure, Commissioner Weatherford.
Mr. Boatman, without going into great detail, as far as the numbers, we do a biannual budget, and this budget in 18 was set on the previous millage rate. If the new millage rate is indeed passed, then we would have some type of fund balance left in 18 that we weren't anticipating, would we not?
That's correct, sir. If this board approves the budget and millage rate on the 25th, the millage rate is not only for the 19 budget, but it's also for the fiscal year 18. So we would generate additional revenue in 18 that would go into fund balance and look at those reserves and possibly addressing additional items through capital or whatever the board's discretion would be.
So I just wanted to point that out as another possible source. I know that's going to be a pretty significant amount of money, but it's still a significant amount of money.
Fund balance is still one-time money. So if you're looking at that to be able to provide a merit increase, it's not a recurring source.
I'm looking at that to free up other resources that could not be one-time money.
Okay.
If we had capital that was allocated in the 18 budget, we use fund balance to pay for that, that would free up general fund recurring money to do raises in personnel. So it goes hand in hand.
And this kind of conversation I'm glad to hear because it's a conversation of hope. That there are ways that we can do things and we are looking to do those things and I wouldn't have it any other way. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Great job, you and your staff, all of it. Thank you very much. With that, we're adjourned.